Ferrari had the pace to fight for the Monaco win, but the radio, the data, and the crash exposed something far more dangerous. Charles Leclerc was racing at home when his Ferrari refused to slow down. The rear brakes did not respond properly. The car went straight into the barriers, and Leclerc made it clear this was not another Monaco mistake he was willing to carry. He said the data confirmed the brakes. He said the car was impossible to control. And then came the line that shook Ferrari. He was not taking the blame. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton was close enough to threaten Kimi Antonelli for victory until a 5-second pit lane penalty turned Ferrari's best chance into another painful near miss. One side of the garage lost trust. The other lost time. And now the tension inside Ferrari is impossible to hide, because if Leclerc cannot trust the brakes and Hamilton cannot get a clean race, then Ferrari's biggest problem is not Mercedes. Is Ferrari itself. Subscribe to the channel. Monaco was supposed to be Ferrari's perfect trap for Mercedes. The car had speed. The streets gave them emotion. Hamilton had the experience to hunt a win. Leclerc had the home crowd behind him and the painful memory of every Monaco heartbreak pushing him forward. Everything was there for Ferrari to turn one weekend into a statement. But Ferrari's problem was already inside the car before Sunday ever began. The brakes. And that matters because Monaco is the one circuit where a brake issue is not just a performance weakness. It is a threat. At most tracks, a driver can sometimes survive uncertainty. He can lock up, run wide, lose time, and come back. Maybe the tires are damaged. Maybe the lap is ruined. But the race is not always over. At Monaco, there is no forgiveness like that. The walls are too close. The corners are too tight. The margin between control and impact is almost nothing. So when Charles Leclerc arrived at his home Grand Prix already lacking confidence in the brakes, Ferrari's weekend was not just tense. It was dangerous. And the warning had been there for everyone to hear. This was not a sudden complaint after the crash. Leclerc had already been dealing with braking problems before Monaco, especially in Canada, where he said he had been struggling with confidence under braking. He had already connected that lack of confidence to mistakes and lockups. Ferrari had already been investigating the brake-by-wire mapping, cooling behavior, rear brake temperature, and pad conditioning. In plain English, Ferrari was trying to understand why the car did not always slow down in the way Leclerc expected. And that is a terrifying problem for a driver. Because braking is not just slowing a Formula One car. Braking is where a driver attacks, is where he decides to wait one more meter before hitting the pedal, is where he turns courage into lap time, is where he takes the car deeper than feels comfortable, trusting that everything underneath him will respond exactly when it should. If the brakes work, the driver can be brave. If the brakes feel uncertain, the driver starts protecting himself from the car. That is what Ferrari could not afford at Monaco. Leclerc needed total belief. Not 90%. Not enough. Total belief. Because at his home race, every corner carries pressure. Every mistake is louder. Every lap feels personal. The crowd is not just watching a Ferrari driver. It is watching Charles Leclerc, the Monegasque driver who has been hurt by this race again and again. And once more he arrived with speed. That made the situation even more painful. The SF26 was not slow in Monaco. Leclerc topped the first practice session. Hamilton led the second. Ferrari had enough pace to make the timing screens look dangerous for Mercedes. The car was giving the team a reason to dream. But pace can hide a weakness only for so long. A fast car with a brake problem is not a safe weapon. It is a gamble. And Ferrari knew they were gambling. The team had a solution prepared for the brake issue, but Monaco created a difficult decision. A new solution might have fixed the problem, but it could also change the feeling of the car at the most delicate circuit on the calendar. Drivers do not like unknowns in Monaco. They prefer certainty, even imperfect certainty. Leclerc chose the familiar configuration. That choice is what makes the story so complicated, because it was not simply Ferrari forcing him into danger, and it was not simply Leclerc ignoring the team. It was a shared decision shaped by pressure, experience, risk, and the strange logic of Monaco. Sometimes the driver chooses the car he knows, because the car he does not know feels even more dangerous. But Formula One can be cruel with decisions that make sense at the time. The familiar configuration carried the familiar problem, and that problem was still there. Before qualifying, Leclerc wanted Ferrari to make a step forward. He knew the braking issue had already hurt his confidence. He knew that Monaco qualifying could decide the whole race. He knew that one hesitation, one lockup, one unstable braking moment could push him out of the fight before Sunday even started. Then qualifying arrived. Kimi Antonelli put Mercedes on pole. Max Verstappen took second. Lewis Hamilton was third. Leclerc was fourth. For Hamilton, third was not perfect, but it was alive. At Monaco, third gives you pressure. It gives you strategy. It gives you a chance if the race breaks open. For Leclerc, fourth felt much heavier, because fourth at Monaco can feel like standing outside a locked door. You can see the fight, but you need help to enter it. A safety car, a red flag, a mistake ahead, something beyond the normal rhythm of the race. And Leclerc was trying to force his way back into that fight while carrying the exact doubt a driver cannot carry in Monaco. Do the brakes answer when I need them? That was Ferrari's first problem. Their second problem was that Mercedes looked calm. Antonelli was not driving like a rookie overwhelmed by Monaco. He had the championship momentum. He had the pole. He had a Mercedes that looked composed. And Ferrari knew that if it wanted to beat him, it could not rely on raw emotion. It needed precision. Hamilton needed a clean race. Leclerc needed a car he could trust. The pit wall needed to make no mistakes. The systems needed to behave perfectly. But Ferrari entered Sunday with the weekend already cracked. One driver had the best chance to pressure the win. The other was fighting the most personal race of his season with a car that had already damaged his confidence. That is where the tension inside Ferrari truly began. Not after the crash. Not after the furious comments. Not after the penalty. It began when Ferrari realized it had the pace to fight, but not the certainty to control the fight. That is the most painful kind of Formula One weekend. If you are slow, you accept the problem. If you are close, every weakness becomes a crime. And Ferrari were close. Close enough for Hamilton to believe Monaco could become a defining Ferrari moment. Close enough for Leclerc to believe his home race still had something to offer. Close enough for the entire team to understand that a win was possible if everything came together. But Monaco does not reward almost. It punishes almost. And Ferrari was about to learn that in two different ways. Hamilton's race would become a story of lost seconds. Leclerc's race would become a story of lost trust. Two different failures. One Ferrari crisis. When the lights went out, Ferrari still had a real chance. That is what makes the story so painful. This was not a race where the red cars were buried. It was not a weekend where Mercedes had disappeared into another world and Ferrari had no answer. Hamilton was close enough to matter. Leclerc was still close enough to benefit if Monaco did what Monaco so often does: create chaos. And very quickly, the race began to offer exactly that. Antonelli controlled the front from pole, and that immediately forced Ferrari into a difficult position. The young Mercedes driver looked calm, composed, and almost untouchable in clean air. He was not overdriving. He was not making Monaco look bigger than him. He was managing the streets with the kind of control that frustrates every driver behind. Hamilton understood the danger. At Monaco, you do not always win by attacking immediately. You win by staying close enough to turn pressure into opportunity. You wait for the safety car. You wait for the pit window. You wait for one slight mistake from a leader, one slow stop, one restart where cold tires change everything. Hamilton has spent his entire career understanding those moments. And in the early phase, he kept Ferrari alive. He did not need to force a move that was not there. He needed to stay inside the race, keep the gap relevant, and make sure Antonelli could never fully relax. That was the plan. And the race began helping him. Safety cars appeared. The rhythm broke. Strategy became more complicated. Monaco, which can sometimes become a procession, suddenly had movement, uncertainty, and danger. Every interruption meant the leader had to rebuild control. Every restart meant Ferrari had another chance to apply pressure. This was the opening Hamilton needed. Then Ferrari gave it away. A pit lane speeding penalty. 5 seconds. It sounds small when spoken quickly, but at Monaco, 5 seconds can destroy a win chance. Because there is almost nowhere to recover it. There are no easy overtakes. No long run where a faster car can simply erase the mistake. No comfortable margin where a driver can turn a penalty into an inconvenience. At Monaco, 5 seconds becomes a wall. Hamilton's Ferrari had briefly exceeded the pit lane speed limit before reaching the pit box, and the FIA applied the penalty. The consequence was immediate. Hamilton could still finish second. He could still score strong points. He could still prove that his pace in the SF26 was real. But the sharpest part of his threat was gone. Antonelli no longer had to feel the full weight of Hamilton behind him in the same way. Mercedes knew the penalty was there. Ferrari knew it too. The pressure that might have turned into a genuine win fight had been weakened by a detail that should never decide a team's biggest opportunity. That is why this hurt Ferrari so much. Hamilton did not miss the win because he lacked speed. He did not miss the win because he lacked experience. He missed the chance to fully attack because Ferrari's race was not clean enough. And when a team is trying to beat Mercedes, clean is the minimum requirement. Not exceptional, not lucky, minimum. Hamilton's second place was valuable, but it was not satisfying. Not for Ferrari, not for Hamilton, not in a race where the win had been close enough to imagine. Because near misses are dangerous in Formula One. They give you points, but they also give you regret. And while Hamilton's race was becoming a story of lost time, Leclerc's race was becoming something far darker. For Leclerc, the question was never only about position. It was about whether the car would answer when he needed it. The brake issue had followed him all weekend. It had followed him from Canada. It had followed him into practice, into qualifying, into the race. Every lap carried that hidden doubt. And late in the Grand Prix, the doubt became reality. Leclerc approached the corner. He applied the brakes. The Ferrari did not slow properly. That moment is almost impossible to overstate, because from outside the car, a crash can look sudden. A car goes straight. The barrier arrives. The camera cuts. The commentator reacts. But inside the cockpit, the feeling is more violent than the image. The driver knows what he asked the car to do. He knows how much brake pressure he applied. He knows what response should have come back through the pedal, through the chassis, through the tires, through his body. And when that response does not come, there is no time to process the failure. There is only impact waiting. Leclerc went straight into the barriers. At Monaco, at home, in the race where he had already carried more emotional pressure than almost anyone else on the grid. At first, there was a possible explanation outside Ferrari's control. The track surface had already been under scrutiny. There were concerns about damaged tarmac, and Monaco's race had been chaotic enough that it was easy to wonder whether the road itself had contributed. But Leclerc rejected that. He said the asphalt was not the issue.